Now, I want to ask, like, what made you want to become a film director in the first place, Chuck?
Well, I hope we have a couple hours for me to tell this story, but
Oh boy.
in 10th grade, in my high school, I had the opportunity in our school that we had morning announcements
Hmm.
um, on the television. We had our own little television channel within our school. And we used to have to produce and direct on a daily basis, 5 days a week, a program. So that sort of got me fired up. I also started off as an actor, and the opportunities back in the 70s for a black person to get the leading role in Camelot or Music Man, it really wasn't happening. So I always enjoyed hearing the applause of the audience. So that was in my blood. So I figured instead of acting, why don't I get my focus on directing and being involved with production? So I did that, and it clicked from 10th grade, and I pursued it through college and moved out to California. And not knowing anyone, uh, tried to strategically figure out how could I get into business. And the one area was being a page for ABC. Now, back in the day, the hot programs on ABC were Mork and Mindy, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Welcome Back Carter, General Hospital, Family Feud with Richard Dawson. And as a page, you would have to bring in the audience, seat them. You would have to answer phones for the stars during rehearsal. So we had a multitude of quote unquote slave jobs, but it gave you the opportunity to have first hand account of what production was about. And we had carte blanche of all the major studios in Los Angeles. So I figured by being a page, how could I take the next level? So the next level from being a page, I used to go out to the Today Show. I'm not sorry, the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and
Hmm.
I saw production and how it was run on a professional level, and figured out my best way to get into the director's position is starting off as a stage manager. And so from a stage manager, I got my first shot with my first bosses, Kukoff and Harris, on a show called Detective School One Flight Up, which was a half-hour sitcom. And the show was canceled after 13 episodes, but at least it got me in the Directors Guild, which is a very hard feat to accomplish. Got me in as a stage manager, and from that point on, from 1980 on up, it took me another 4 years to really sharpen my craft as a stage manager, and that's where I first met Bill Cosby on the Cosby Show to do the pilot in May of 1984.
It's such a funny connection because in the Slimed and Oral History of Nickelodeon's Golden Age by Matt Klickstein, which you were interviewed for that, and one of the quotes you said is that you think that Melissa, Joan Hart, that is, she did a commercial with Bill Cosby when she was very young, and I did not know that at all. It was like a Jello commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny as you mentioned the old cliche line of 6 degrees of separation. It's so funny how things keep coming around to people that I've worked with in my career. It goes in and out of working with Bill Cosby and some of the young talent who has worked with him. And Melissa, when I first worked with her on Clarissa Explains It All, I'm going, God, here is another bright, shining star. She was just amazing what she went through as an actress and learning her lines because she would have to, if you remember the show, she would have to talk right to camera and do
Yeah.
these monologues, a couple shows a week.
Mhm.
And for her to learn it at a young age and give a performance as a young girl, it just blew me away. I mean, I couldn't do it. So it was up to me as a challenge of bringing that energy and what she brought to the camera. And I love directing. I love coming up with new, innovative ideas. I pride myself of not having two shows ever look the same. So, I sort of brought that magic to the show, and it was a blast.
It was. It was. There's something about her eyes that captures me. I think a person's eyes could tell a whole lot about a person with her blue eyes. And Melissa, this was Clarissa Explains It All. This was a kids show, and I know prior you did directing for Thea and the Cosby Show and Martin. But were you excited to be directing a children's show for the first time? Or were you a bit nervous at first because this is a kids audience, and before you were directing mostly for family sitcoms and adult audiences, or were you just excited to doing it?
Well, it was a couple things. I was definitely excited. I wasn't nervous because I'm a big kid at heart.
Mm-hmm.
It's just knowing how to get something out of kids because they do have a vulnerable state. Well, all actors, regardless of how big they are, meaning age or popularity, I think that all actors are insecure to a certain degree. Um, just like everybody in the industry, but you put all your magic together to create magic. Um, with doing Clarissa Explains It All, and it is a primarily it was a perspective of a child as opposed to a adult down. No, it's about acting, and it's about making acting believable. Uh, I just, there were times where some of the days were long, and after doing a show week in and week out, day in and day out, there everybody gets a little burnout mode, and it's up to a director to keep the momentum going and the energy going. And man, there were been some times where I think I was in my early 30s at the time, doing ridiculous things like jumping on the floor or wearing funny wigs and doing makeup just to keep the energy and the excitement of the kid actors going. So if I do something stupid and silly, they would do the same thing in front of the camera. I mean, again, stealing the idea from one of the guys I admire, Steven Spielberg. They used to have dress up day on certain days, and there's some shots if you can find it. Spielberg dressed up as a lady with a dress and a wig and a hat on. It's just how do you get things going? How do you not manipulate, but how do you keep the momentum of excitement going? And on a set, you come up with all kinds of different ideas.
That's amazing. Melissa, she did talk about in her autobiography that you were one of her favorite directors because there were times where she would get so exhausted from doing take after take, and you just said, "Hey, let's just joke around and have fun, so we could knock this thing out of the bag." And one of your favorite quotes that she always remembers from you was, "Knock this out of the cannon take," or something like that. Do you remember saying that, or something
Oh,
around
yeah,
that line?
shoot it out of a cannon.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just, it's to the point of just getting that energy up and that drive up. And I knew when she was getting tired. And what I always kept in mind, especially with the younger generation, younger actors, not only with Melissa, but with the cast of All That and my brother and me down there,
Mm-hmm.
and even Gullah Gullah Island, is and going back to Bill Cosby, even though the Cosby Show was the number one show, we shot two shows every Thursday. An early show called The Dress and a later show called The Air Show. And the air show sometimes would finish at 9:30, 10, 10:30. But Keisha, as I mentioned, she was only like 4, 5, 6 years old. And, as an actor, you think, oh, she's an actor, she's having a great time. But you got to be very conscious of these kids are very young. And they don't have the stamina that we adults have. So that try to keep them, other than giving them candy where they start bouncing off the walls. You gotta keep them preoccupied and know when to pull the plug or know when to move on and make something happen in an edit bay. So I'm constantly thinking as a director of thinking of the big picture as opposed to just one particular scene or a day or an hour.
And this was shot at the Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando, Florida. So, what was your first impression of the studio when you got there? All of these.
Well, it was bittersweet. I loved the idea of going down to Florida because it was new and exciting. But the facilities down there in its first wave of doing, because essentially they were doing sitcoms down there, and they really didn't have a lot of experience doing sitcoms, even though it was for Nickelodeon. So a lot of the equipment, or some of the equipment, was antiquated. Even though they had the facilities, there were a couple things that had to be adjusted, like the cameras. And, they had some of the toys that they didn't need, but some of the toys that needed fixing or get rid of and get new. But as we started to go through this first season that I was down there, it was slowly everybody started to really fine-tune their craft when it came to lighting and sound and set design. I think Maria Perez Brown was talking about the set design people. They were amazing of what they pulled off down there. I mean, we would do parodies because Clarissa would get into these fantasies, and we would do these segments of part of her fantasies. And I remember one of my favorite part was doing she had a virus, a cold, and one of her things was she fantasized about being on the USS Enterprise, Star Trek. And I mean, the set that we had, from the chairs to the lights and the sound effect and the miniature spaceships we had, it was just a blast to pull that off. I had a great time. And the fun part about directing down there of these shows is it wasn't the pressure of studios always being on the set and always looking over your shoulder and wondering if the script was funny or not funny. It was the small core group of the writers and producers who were involved with the show. We would sit around, discuss things, plan things out, and then they would give me carte blanche with the actors to create that magic for each and every episode, regardless of what the show was.
Yeah, it's really, the set design for all of them were just amazing, and I've been there like I said, in 1994. It was really a huge studio, I must say. The sound stages are just large. Was it the biggest studio that you've ever shot in, or is it still the same case for you?
Well, I mean, I think that the studios were fairly large because the planning that they had down there. It was Universal, and they had tours going on.
Yes, that's
so,
right.
It had to sort of be a little bit higher, and so it could facilitate, a tour coming through every 20, 30 minutes. So it's not necessarily the biggest stage. I mean, they did have several stages down there, but it did lend to having multiple sets, moving things around. They would have an audience in several of the stages. So, no, not some of the biggest, because I've worked on a lot of big projects, not only with children's programming, but a lot of variety and situation comedy type show.
Yeah, the Sinbad thing, I remember that. And I've always spoken to people about the tour. It would pass every 20 to 30 minutes. Like, was it easy for you to, like, still be working with people watching behind you in the glass proof? I mean, because you guys couldn't really hear what was going on, but you could sometimes see them when you guys were on break rehearsing or something like that, you know?
Well, I think ultimately, during the first couple of weeks of shooting down there, I was really conscious of it, and you would get the memos as, okay, Let's not act completely crazy or
Yeah.
do odd things. But after a couple of weeks, man, you just sort of you're not aware that it's there. Just like surveillance cameras now, even though they're every 5 blocks everywhere in this country, you forget that they're there unless something sparks that they're there. Not only did the tours go throughout the stage area, but when I had to run upstairs, and this is where I got a lot of my physical work, from the stage to the directing the control room, it was up 2 flights. So I remember running up and downstairs, and as in the control room, there was a large, one of the back walls was all glass, so the tour would see all our monitors, and they could see me calling a line cut of the 4 cameras, sometimes 5 cameras that we use, so they could see what's going on. They couldn't hear what's going on. But sometimes we would just have fun, and we'd start dancing in front and, get a couple laughs from the tour going by. We'd had Halloween where we would wear a mask and go up to the window. I think if we ever got caught, we would get in trouble. But, hey, it was all about having fun.
Yeah, it was such an interesting attraction. I mean, well, idea. I mean, to put the tour in the building. I still think there's no other studio who does things like that today. It's very rare for a high-priced studio to do that, for have tours inside of a building. And I've
Well, I don't think it's happening, and I think the cliche line that there were. I mean, it's Nickelodeon, so a lot of parents would walk by and they would take their kids,
hmm
and then there were I guess, some VIP moments where the kids weren't on the regular tour, but they would come down to the studio itself and be able to meet some of the cast members. And I would always make it a point of grabbing 1 or 2 kids to talk to them and let them, call out action or cut or
Oh.
have them give a note to an actor. And it's to the point of we all, as professionals and even politicians, everyone starts off as a kid and everyone has a dream. And something sparks that dream to take it to the next level. So the cliche line, if I could reach one child, I'd reach it. Now, no, I want more than one child, and I want them to fantasize about, hey, maybe I can be an actor, or maybe I can be a director when I get older. It gives them a drive or something to really go forward and fulfill a dream.
That's so nice. I mean, yeah, that's the whole premise about the Knick Studios was just where dreams could come true. I mean, there were so many people who I feel like today got wanted to get their start there and still get inspiration of being a director. And one of the things I've always figured, because wasn't exciting for you to go there because there was a lot of talk about Orlando becoming Hollywood East. This was going to be the next Hollywood where film and production is going on, though it never quite lived up to it now. Because was it exciting for you to go outside of LA and go to a new area where all the buzz was happening?
Well, I think, yeah, it got me into, like I mentioned before, there was a coolness and a relaxed state where we could create great programming, not in that Hollywood quote unquote environment.
Mm,
Um, it was fortunate that it was in Orlando. The summer times were brutal, but
yeah.
I didn't care. Um, as Maria mentioned, it was 70% of work with children, but the other 30%, I am very passionate, and back in the day and even today, I love golf. So whenever I got a day off, it was hit the golf courses and hit the nightclubs, and I got to correct Maria. She mentioned one of the nightclubs that we used to go to all the time.
Oh, at
The name
Disney World, the one that
That's
she
just,
talked about.
yeah.
Oh,
The
okay.
name of the nightclub we used to go to was called 8 Track. And, you
Very
know,
70s, the name.
right. and but it was a blast. I mean, to the point where I was even considering about relocating down there.
mm.
because it was such a great environment, a working environment to be involved with, doing production, seeing that magic on the screen on Nickelodeon, and not being embarrassed of what was put on as programming. It could have been, Clarissa explains it all, or all that. It could have very well been up with all network shows. The quality for kids was just amazing.
Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, during the 90s, Nickelodeon was on top of things. I mean, the place where Nick was made, which was Nick Studios, they just promoted that thing out of the bag. And it's funny because I always, whenever I go to Orlando, one of my favorite spots is International Drive. Do you remember that? And they have great shopping
Oh
malls there
yeah,
too in Orlando.
oh yeah, yeah. I remember that quite well. But it lends itself to doing so many things. As I mentioned, once we I enjoy going to work every day. It was
Mm.
a blast. There's not the LA traffic. You don't have to deal with so much stuff. And once we got out of the work environment, I mean, as I mentioned, we would go out. The restaurants were just amazing. And, some of the activities that we used to go bungee jumping. I got certified doing skydiving down there.
Wow.
You could drive to Cape, what is it, Kennedy Center. Um,
Yeah.
I remember a couple times, two times, one during the day and one at night, we watched the shuttle take off because it took off, mind you, about 70 miles away, but especially during the night, you could just see this glow of the Discovery taking off. And we were just like, again, kids watching something take place.
Hmm. Yeah, it's such a beautiful sight to see the space shuttle go off at night. I mean, a lot of people downplay Orlando, but it's such an interesting city, I feel, to live in at times, you know?
Well, it's been some time since I've been there. I mean, when I left, they were just developing the theme park, amusement park down there. I guess they were because when I first got there, it was just desolate down there. There was nothing but open fields of tall grass, and then they started to bulldoze and dynamite, and I guess Universal got into, hey, Disney's not the only one that's going to take all this money, so they came up with the theme park. So that's when I started to sort of get move away from doing a lot of shows because it just started to dissipate the number of shows down there. Um, even though they had great facilities, they weren't quote unquote sound studios. So whenever during the summer months or early fall months when they had big hurricanes down there, big rainstorms, we would literally have to stop sometimes while
Mm.
we were doing takes because we could hear the rain just hitting the top of the studios, and it
Yeah.
got into our sound system. But man, it would be great if they could resurrect the fun and magic down at those studios.
It would be. And speaking of the theme parks, did you have a favorite ride to go on at Universal Studios or attraction?
Boy, I'm glad you asked that question because I don't know how often I did it, but I bet you I must have hit it 20, 30, 40 times. Two favorite rides. One was the Terminator ride,
Mm.
which I thought that the way they pulled that off of having actors and screen and the surround sound and the chairs that you sat in it just blew me away. I could never get enough of that. And the way that they did it, as you were standing in line, once you got into the facility, of looking at monitors and them giving the pre-story about what you're about ready to experience. So Terminator was one of my favorites, and then the other favorite was Back to the Future.
Yeah.
I just love the way that they put that together. So those were my two favorite rides.
Yeah, I mean, Terminator, I'm a huge Terminator fan, man. And you were right, the way the actors could perceive off and have, all those special effects going on was awesome. And Back to the Future is cool. My favorite old school ride there was Jaws, because I'm a big, like, shark fan. I used to love the way the Jaws popped out of the water on the boat. So that was a cool thing. And after Clarissa ended, and because this was the first show that kind of broke the fourth wall, like played off the role of fourth wall, and you got to do that again with Gullah Gullah Island. Natalie, she got to talk to the screen, and with Shelby Woo, she did the same thing too. So, what difference was there working on Gullah Gullah and Shelby Woo, because they were primarily kids on Gullah Gullah?
Well, it's a lot of people don't realize breaking the fourth wall. Mitchell Kriegman, who really got it sparked with Clarissa Explains It All. There's a lot of thought process behind breaking the fourth wall. You got to know when you can do it. Does the character break the fourth wall with the other actors in the set, or do they have to be by themselves, or how to turn to a particular camera to have that fourth wall work? It just doesn't, you just don't throw something like that in. So it can help because it does give an opportunity to be able to shoot something that you can put into the library for a particular episode. For Gullah Gullah Island, we would start to do sometimes multiple episodes for scheduling reasons. So if we could get Natalie to do 4 breaking the fourth wall right to camera, we would do it. And that would be banked, which would make our schedule a little bit lighter, because we sometimes had brutal schedules to make deadlines. With Shelby Woo, it's the same thing of breaking that fourth wall. It's really a process that is well thought out and well written to set up a particular episode.
Yeah, and Shelby Woo, which I said yesterday, was very underrated. One of my favorite episodes that you got to direct was called "The Missing Dolphin," and a favorite scene of mine is when Shelby was stuck in that water container, and all that water flooded in, and she got to swim in through the pool area into another area inside of like this small underwater shaft. Like that scene was so well played. Like, what was that scene? How did that scene played out?
Well, first, I was blown away because whenever we shot on remotes, and that was again Alan Goodman, who was a great producer, and the team to be able to facilitate, and there were a lot of open doors because they knew Nickelodeon was growing, and they knew the popularity. It's a very smart move. The popularity of kids watching these shows, they would open up the doors for us to shoot. So they knew that once we would do a remote shooting at a facility like the Dolphins, or we did the alligator crocodile area, they knew that would bring in interest of people coming to Orlando and wanting to hit these tours. I'm glad that was one of my favorite episodes as well, because it was well thought out. I just thought that the facility was just amazing. What we shot. And I'm glad you liked the suspense of it because we used the stunt lady, had the same clothes as Shelby had on, and put the wig on, and she was a very, very good swimmer.
Oh, okay.
And then with the art of editing, we pulled it off.
Wow, and it worked well. I mean, Irene, she did a good job with Shelby through the whole time. But one
Oh,
of the
yeah.
things noticeable about Shelby Woo was, yeah, you guys shot at Nick Studios, but you guys also shot on location. Was the Florida sun ever a bother for you at all when filming? Because it's really hot down
It
there.
was always a factor, and I can't remember because it's going back, and I'm getting old and senile. It was definitely a factor. We had the sort of gauge, and it's amazing. I don't know how it happens, but during the summer months, a lot of summer days, it would rain about the same time every day. So we sort of had to either get up very early in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
to get around those thunderstorms, or do late at night. I mean, the excitement I got, it was just like shooting a film, one camera film style.
Yeah.
Is we were shooting at Nickelodeon Orlando at Universal Studios, but the other great thing is they had a backlot. So we would figure out, okay, what street do we want to have a New York look, or do we want,
Mm-hmm.
a West Coast look, or do we want a small town look? We would just have it scheduled to get the crew out, and we had carte blanche to the facility down there. So it was a blast that we could do that outdoor look and not have to get a big crew and equipment and the whole 9 yards to pull something off like this.
Yeah, I mean, the way that Universal was set up, it was such a cool thing with the backlots. I mean, that helps a lot with movies and TV shows and even commercials too. And it's a good thing that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a good thing that park has grown a lot over the years. It's really huge now with two different theme parks at Universal now. And with going back to the beginning of when we talked, when you said you liked the idea of having an audience when you were acting and then directing, but you got to direct all that and this shot in front of a live studio audience. How much fun was that? Finally getting to do that this time around when all the other shows for Nick that you directed were not in front of an audience.
Well, I think with an audience, because the majority of the shows that I did direct was a sitcom scenario,
Mhm.
um, and a variety scenario. It again gave the opportunity of rehearsing several days before we started the shoot, and it gave the actors like Keenan, who is just phenomenal now. I mean, he's taken his stuff from knowing this kid when he was 13, and now I don't know how old Keenan is, but he's on Saturday Night Live every week.
Yes.
Um, it gives it gives some excitement to the performers and the sketch itself. I mean, we can gauge, and from my experience, knowing when they're going to laugh and when to hold, or having to cut in a reaction shot to get a bigger laugh. Um, and with all that, not only did we do a lot of sketches that we pre-taped, but it gave the younger generation, along with their parents, the exposure of a sitcom and being part of a live audience that we've seen on television for many, many, many years since I Love Lucy.
Mhm.
Um, it's just this energy, man, when you get a live audience there. And I don't necessarily like what's going on now, and they're trying to get back to a live audience, but for budgetary reasons, they sort of cut the live audience and use this horrific laugh track that I just cannot
Oh,
stand.
oh my gosh. Yeah, you're not the only one who feels that way. I mean, you could just hear the same laugh over and over. It's like, come on now. Like, what are you guys trying to do here? I mean, let's have an audience built in. I mean, and the cool thing about all that was having regular audience members participate in a skit within a skit. I mean, I don't know if they were actors, but that was one of the cool things for audience participation to be on that show too. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, they got audience participation, and we loved, which, again, I like not having the same show all the time. So, if there was a lead in for a sketch, one of my shows that I remember growing up that I used to religiously watch, and now I'm starting to date myself, was American Bandstand. And at one point, American Bandstand with Dick Clark was on 6 days a week. And what I loved about Dick Clark is when he introduced a group like the Jackson Five, or several other groups, he would sit in the audience next to an everyday person, whether it be an adult or a kid or a teenager. So that gave the excitement again too of, wow, this is really cool, and it serves several purposes of, yes, we're a live audience, yes, people having fun, and look at this excitement, and we're not afraid to get in with the audience. That there, and the people watching on TV get a sense of, this show is really cool and everyone's having a good time.
right, right. I understand what you're saying. I mean, they could definitely tell when a skit is funny, and that certainly hypes you up and makes you think, okay, I need to step my game up and perform better than the last time. And that makes the show all around more successful, more better, I feel like, when the audience
Oh
tells you
yeah,
what to do.
oh
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, and
and with all that, it was great because I can't remember what year I started to really get away from directing down there because I started to shift from children's programming and I did learn a lot and it had me direct a couple episodes that I'm proud of too of doing two Sesame Street specials.
Hmm.
One was New Year's Eve special, and one was the 25th anniversary special. But uh, working with puppets and Muppets and children, it was quite interesting. It's a good chapter in my career.
Yeah, you should be very proud. I mean, all of these 90s Nickelodeon shows, they made such a positive impact on fans. And people still talk about saying, oh, this was the best time of kids' TV. Like, this was so much better than the stuff that's on TV now. How do you feel knowing that all these shows from back then are still loved today that you were a part
Well,
of?
you know what? It's amazing. If you were to rerun these shows, just like Sesame Street, if you were to rerun the Nickelodeon shows back from the 90s and
Yeah.
through that decade, you could still get interesting kids watching it. And not only watching it, want to watch it more. I mean, we all grow older. We still don't, I don't play with building blocks or little choo-choo trains. So, we grow out of it. But each generation, kids are the same. Mind you, kids today, back in the 90s, even though cell phones were just about ready to spark and they didn't have iPads or they didn't have iPhones, um, the kids are now getting much more
Hippier.
smarter
Hmm.
with and creative with their toys surrounding them. But
Right.
there will always be television, and there will always be a love of hearing like songs and seeing kids your age or a little bit older dancing and having characters. Um, that's going to be interesting. And it's a shame that they've sort of restructured Universal down there. And I think by the process and the devotion you have of interviewing all these different people in the different positions, whether they're actor, producer, writer, talent, they really need kids need another sanctuary. Kids need another type of show that adults can have their children enjoy, where you don't have to get in the car and try to go somewhere. Watch it on Nickelodeon, and hopefully one day, with you creating a little heat, they can get that back.
Right. I certainly hope so. Thank you for saying that. The simplicity of it sounds it all up. I feel like, there's shows that need to be taught, have kids being kids basically. That's really what it's all about. Not about cell phones, not about being stars. It's about kids' creative minds and thinking, yeah, let's think of this way of how we could help others or how we could achieve goals, but doing it in a not in a lame kind of way, like in a commanding role way, like in a kid's mind.
Well, and that's part I would really love. I think it would be an ideal scenario of getting the top key people who helped build Nickelodeon. It would be great to get 10, 20, 30 of us to do a great retrospective 2-hour special and to see the growth of the actors and where their careers have gone. Some people have gotten completely out, but
Mhm.
some are still on the screen. Some
Mhm.
are taking, some are doctors, some are lawyers. I mean, it was a stepping point of their careers, but it didn't necessarily have to follow acting. But it gave them, more importantly, the confidence of any position that they wanted to do. And it would be great to sit down and reminisce with a group of my peers um, to bring back that life because the ghost of Nickelodeon is still down at that facility. I don't care what they say. We had a
Yeah.
blast down there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like you said, the slime on Matt Clickstein's book, that was kind of a big reunion in a way for you to be interviewed. And with this documentary, there could be another heat round of a special. But with all those people that you mentioned, like how great were all the staff who worked at Nick? I know you kind of mentioned it again, but kind of, but just tell me like an inside of how everyone down there was, because I always hear positive stories.
Well, the thing that is the positive level, and it's I'm not trying to make this sound like it was candy coated, but I tell you what, it was more of the challenge of the vision that I came up with. One episode that just comes to mind briefly on Gullah Gullah Island. James, the character, I think he was loving the idea that spring had just started, and I remember because the set that we shot, it was the house, and they constructed this fantastic tree and put a tire swing on it. But one of the songs was talking about spring and what do you do in spring. And I remember vividly coming up with an idea of challenging the crew. I said, I want James to fly a kite. And, you could only go so high. We had as you mentioned earlier, the studios were huge. And we had this big cyc, and, you have to hang the light on grids. So I said, let's take a camera and put it on the floor and have a perspective of James looking up flying a kite. And as you fly a kite, it was a strategic plan to have a regular string, and as the string went up about 15, 20 feet, we got rid of the string and put a fishing line, and then we had a proportion kite flying from the rafters, and the kite was only about, I would say, 8 inches, to give the illusion that the kite was up 200 feet. And it was those kind of things, and the lighting and the sound and the props that we had. It was challenging the entire members of a particular show, whether it was lighting, and it was sound, and it was wardrobe, and it was makeup. Everybody was challenged, which really created a lot of commitment from everyone. I mean, there were times where it was like something as simple as, a book or a wig. We would do something simple, but sometimes someone would come up with a great idea that really added the show to go to the next level. So the crew, I got to give hats off. And it's not like Hollywood where you got a multitude of places that you can go to facilitate anyone's needs. This was Orlando, Florida, and they made it happen. Whether it was in the makeup area or the wardrobe area or the set construction area, they had a whole workshop where you would hear wood being cut or pipes being made or glass being colored. Everybody was working at all times, and sometimes, man, the paint would still be wet when we got it on the set. But we made it happen, and we made it happen in time.
Talented people, I must say. I feel like it was because those crew down there, they did stuff their own way. They were learning from Hollywood's mistakes, and they just did it in their own Florida fashion way. I don't know, it's kind of silly, but I definitely do think they did it in their own style. You guys down there.
Well, they did it, and you know what? The main thing is they did it for a quarter of the budget.
Yeah.
And that's probably part of the problem too. Is it's so pricey to do things in the Los Angeles, Hollywood area or the East Coast. And
I just have 3 more questions, but do you have a favorite behind-the-scenes memory of being at Nick? I think of 2 that come to mind, though.
Well, one, Nick, was doing Shelby Woo.
Yes, I think we talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, and it was, we had done our planning, and I was really fired up about going to this alligator farm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole facility, and we, along with the executive producer, Alan, we were waiting for the sun to go down. We had set up our lights, we had talked about the blocking, we purchased all our chickens that we were going to feed the alligators. And so I had never been on an airboat. And you know what the airboat is it's the big fan in the
Right.
back and
Yeah. I know what
roll
that
it
is.
by a stick. And I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy did not look like, he looked like he was out of one of these Jason movies to me. his, teeth weren't, his teeth weren't perfect. He had a southern drawl, but the boy knew how to drive a boat. So I was in the front along with Alan, and we were in the swamp area, which is part of the facility. And we asked to go on a ride. So we went on the ride, and we're just zooming, going left and right, and we must have been moving 50, 60 miles an hour. So we're coming up, and we slow down a little bit, and we're just about ready to come back to where we started. And all of a sudden, you hear this big clunk. And so the boat slowed down, and there's a big tree in the water that had obviously fallen from an electrical storm, a lightning storm, but it was a big tree in the water. So what happened is the captain of the boat, he lost the hydraulics on the stick, so he couldn't control going right or left. So the boat comes up and hits the tree and tips the boat over into the water. And I'm at a panic because we know that there are crocodiles, alligators underneath water. And what they do is they keep themselves cool and they hang out. It's their environment. And so when the boat tipped over, even though I was with Alan, I sort of was holding on to Alan. And at a certain point, as the boat is turning over into the water, I said, the hell with Alan, I'm saving my own life. And I did not let go of the railing. So we hit the water, the boat flips over 90 degrees, and after it all stops, everybody, on the walkie-talkie, the boat's in the water, the director, producer's in the water, and it's like, okay, everybody's running to shore, and the guy's telling us, don't panic, just walk towards shore. Now, we're chest high in the water, and I'm freaking out because I've seen movies with alligators and crocodiles.
Right.
I've seen Jaws. All I know is I'm going to step on one of these things, and there goes Chuck Vinson. So that was one of my fond moments of shooting a Nickelodeon show.
Goodness gracious.
Probably another one was, I think I know I turned 40 down there, and the cast brought a cake in. It was just so touching that they spent time, because the old cliche line is we're a family down there, and it was truly a family, and they brought this big, big cake, and seeing 40 on the cake sort of woke me up. It's like, ooh, you're getting up there in age. But I was still a kid, and again, too, to get another laugh, because they brought me gifts, and they knew I loved playing golf. They got me golf clubs and an outfit, and me being the big kid that I am, I just took the cake and sort of smashed my face in the cake, which got a big laugh down there. But, man, I could go on for the next 2 or 3 hours of just some of the monumental moments that I had down at Nickelodeon.
Yeah, I mean that boat scene. It reminds me of Live and Let Die, the James Bond movie when he was being chased by. Yeah, I mean that. It really reminds me of it. And yeah, I hear you, man. You gotta do what you gotta do to save your own life. Like screw that.
That's right.
Right. Oh my God, that's hilarious. And another one was one of the stunt coordinators, Grady Bishop. He says there was a time where he scared you like in the wee hours of the morning with a fake life-size alligator. Do you remember that part?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody was trying to just always get me. And with the alligator, it's like, okay, it's hard to get me going, but man, when I saw that thing, I turned from being black to an albino man screaming. I just lost it. And
Oh,
it was just, it was okay. You guys got me. Everybody was laughing and just enjoyed that they finally got Chuck.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. They should have took a picture of you being albino turning black and blue. Yeah, like a cartoonish way, you know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Wait, and did you ever get to see anyone get slime before, or have it done to you, the green slime?
Well, no, I never got slime because it was the facility there, and the sliming was another show and another part of the tour. I did watch it down at Orlando, and we did actually one episode. We did a sort of takeoff of being slimed on Taina. Um, One of the girls, Taina's friend, or I
Oh
can't remember,
yeah,
one of the
Renee.
characters got slimed.
Mhm.
Which the slime was, green dye and applesauce.
Mhm.
So my daughter, who was probably a year and a half, 2 years old, it messed her up for a couple months. She did
Oh.
not like that idea. Now she would love to get slimed. And no, brother, you ain't gonna get me slimed because I know I'm not gonna be sitting around getting applesauce out of my ears and nostrils just to get a laugh. But the kids love it.
Yeah, it takes a long time to get the slime out of your hair, and you have to take a showers
Mm-hmm.
to like daily showers to get that thing out. But
Yep.
yes, but would you like to see Nick Studios reopen one day? Do you think it should come back after 9 years of being?
I absolutely. I think it's here's the deal that people got to realize. There will always be kids, and there will always be kids who grow old, and kids love to be amused and entertained. Why not go back and get children's programming back on to the
Hmm.
level of having fun? I mean, it's a whole new ball game now.
Yeah.
You can watch a show on your phone or your iPad or video on demand, but you're still going to need content. And with the big explosion of YouTube and one of the executive producers, uh, Brian Robbins, who has taken it to another level with Awesomeness TV, um, it's about facilitating and getting good quality shows. Sure, you can get content on, but I'm old school.
Yeah.
People are taking a look at a lot of videos, and the video doesn't look good, or it's grainy, or shaky cam, or the lighting's bad, or the sound is bad. I want to go for what I grew up with, the studio somewhat perfection.
Right.
Um, that's what lasts a long time. So let's get some of these shows back on. Yeah, it may cost a couple extra dollars, but look how long it can last.
Yeah.
As opposed to just trying to just get anything on. So content can get on your phone or your iPad or television whenever you want it. Get some good quality stuff. Get some great kid acting. Get some fun sets. Get some props. Get some music and song and dance back on. And
Hmm.
they're not doing it. I guess it's because it's too expensive.
Mm. Like you said, the ghost of Nickelodeon is still in that building, and there's so many stuff that I feel that's missing on TV. Like you guys, the studio, it provided tours, it provided live audience, it provided the Yak kitchen where slime and Yak was made. It provided soundproof stages, kind of almost in a way, and especially the rides there. I mean, why not go there and feel like a kid is being a kid where you could get your dreams and make aspirations come true. So why not have that thing back there and have all of that taken in and make a perfect Nickelodeon show?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, incorporated into those rides. I remember first moving out to LA and Universal out here, they would have it where you could act in a small little sketch, and they would put costumes on and green screen. Have it where a show could have a kid win a contest and be on a sitcom or be on it doesn't have to be the full formatted half-hour show. Do 3 10-minute episodes,
Hmm.
still doing the quality and having production down there. I think it would be a blast, just to get. They're already going to get people out there who are going to ride the rides and who's going to eat and have a good time. But let's get some stuff back on TV again.
Right, right. I agree wholeheartedly. And finally, I think you've already kind of said it in a way, but what do you think made Nick Studios Florida so great and special?
I think what made it special is they listened to what kids wanted.
Hmm.
Bottom line, it's Nickelodeon, and from the executives up in New York, they hired a crew and a cast to perform down in Florida, and they left us alone to create magic at a fraction of the cost. And I think that is the success of a lot of the Nickelodeon shows. You know, we took each level. If you take a look at the first season of Clarissa to the last season, look how the set changed and the makeup and the hair and the wardrobe and the props. It was a growing process that got better as each episode went on the air. So I think that was the success of it all. I enjoyed it tremendously, and getting up there in age, if you were to say, or execs were to say, hey, we're bringing it back down, I would go back down there in a heartbeat, along with my golf club. Um, it would be a blast.
Yes, everyone would be first in line. I sure would be. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. I know Maria, and I have to thank her as well, Maria, for um, making you aware about me. So, yeah, just say thank you.
Well, I had a blast. Thank you for doing it, and anything else I could do to get a crusade. Like I said, even if we had the facility and trying to get some of these head honchos to, hey, do a reunion special,
Hmm.
because I bet you it would get high ratings on the multitude of shows that we did down there. And people love to see what people look like today. I
Yeah.
bet you it would be a high rated special on Nickelodeon.
It would be. It would be. It definitely get high rate. It's happening now with the show Hey Do, like on the '90s or all that thing. Like that's happening now, and there's still a lot of buzz and reunions are going around that too. And all these
Mm-hmm.
convention centers with reunion shows of the '90s things. Yeah, people still talking about it. That's all I can
Yeah.
say. Yeah, but I hope you have a great rest of the day, Chuck. It was nice talking to you.
Well, good talking to you, man, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to have blood coming out of your ears because I talk too much.
You know, it's no problem. I think it's fine, but yeah, I think my ears are definitely full by now. I'm just kidding. All right, take care, man.
All right, you too, man.
All right,
Thank you.
bye bye.